the run, sometimes it's really hard to recognise that you're full. So actually eating mindfully or eating slowly, if we know that this gut hormone takes about, releases 10 to 20 minutes whilst you're eating, if you slow down your eating, it's actually going to help the hormone do its job. So who's found that when you are eating a bit slower, you find that you do feel full and satisfied? Yeah, and you'll find that when you're social. There are two types of people. Some people find when they're socialising they eat like this. Other people forget to eat because they're too engrossed in conversation and they slow down their eating. Who finds it they're like that? Yeah. So that's one of the things that maybe when you're looking at over the challenge is, do I eat slow? Does that actually affect my appetite? Because we know that if you keep eating and you're already full, we know that you can only go one place. Unfortunately. Yeah. There's another hormone as well, and I can't really say, it's called ghrelin. That's another hormone. Ghrelin. And that hormone is actually released about 4 to 5 hours after you've eaten. So what that's telling you is it's actually helping you realise that it's time to eat again. So this hormone will be released to remind you to go and eat something. But who finds, and I know when I've been busy, and you literally can't go and eat something, that you are getting hungrier and hungrier and hungrier. So the longer you leave it, you can actually really wreak havoc with your appetite and hormones. So just being aware that signal there is actually telling you that you need to eat regularly. So it does go back to that old sort of saying of eating small and regular meals. Eating in tune with these appetite hormones will actually help you with your overall metabolism. So that's the biggest thing that keeps coming out of the research is getting in tune with the appetite and actually fine-tuning your metabolism.
I was just going to ask a question. You know how we have the plan set up with the snacks?
Yep.
And like for myself, I'm not quite sure whether I really need to have that snack. So kind of, I don't know, maybe I'm not tuned with the actual feeling of being hungry.
Yeah, depends until I look at the whole diet. For some people, we're saying that this hormone is released every 4 to 5 hours. So for some people, they go, well, these snacks are in tune every 3 hours and that doesn't apply to me. So it depends on the person, but for some people, you may have had a really good meal with a good amount of protein and some low GI carbohydrate that you literally aren't hungry till the next meal. If you've eaten at breakfast at 7 and you eat lunch about 12, that's around 5 hours and that's actually quite good. So I guess the challenge is, this is what I get people to do, is try and experiment, is if you feel like you don't need a snack, have your next meal. Let's say you've had breakfast and you think, I don't feel like having tea or some cup of tea, and you have lunch. Just check out if you're satisfied with lunch. And sometimes people find if they don't have something small, then lunch doesn't become enough. Has anyone found that? You have lunch and you go, oh no, that's next week. I had a lady the other day who was actually going through it. She's saying, I don't know why I'm not losing weight, but she found by lunchtime she had a really nice whole grain sandwich, and she said, I could go for another one, or I could go for a big bowl of fruit. And there was about a 5-hour gap between the breakfast and lunch. Other people, that's enough. Does that make sense?
It does, yeah.
Check it out.
I'm depending on it.
Yeah, so the main thing, this is why it's hard always doing groups, and don't forget I am available for these sessions to have a one-on-one as well. If you've got any specific sort of barriers, it's sometimes really hard to figure out with a group of what is not working for you. So what I'm always giving you is general recommendations, and always try them out and see if they apply to you. But that actually ties into the next one, the third one. And the third part of improving your metabolism is actually balancing out your hormones. So if your first hormone, your insulin, everyone's heard and read, I'm sure, about insulin. Insulin's a very important hormone that actually helps to regulate your blood glucose levels. So I'll draw you a little diagram. So we talked about, I think it was the first session, we talked about carbohydrates. And I said that when you eat carbs, remember they're starches or sugars, they break down and give you glucose in your blood for energy. So once you get a bit of a rise of glucose in your blood, you get this hormone called insulin that sits here, it's in your pancreas, and the insulin takes that glucose to your cell for energy. So your insulin's kind of like a carrier, takes it to the cell for energy. Now, glucose will be stored in your muscle and liver as glycogen. People have heard of glycogen stores, stored there for you before before you go and do your exercise, right? Or before you start to use your brain a lot. So we know with insulin, if you don't eat regularly, you're not going to have a regular supply of glucose, are you? So your insulin's going to be all over the place. What happens if we eat too much on a meal? You get a rise in blood sugar. What happens with insulin? You get a big surge in glucose. What does your pancreas have to do? Work overtime. Yeah. So you've ever heard of insulin resistance? So people say they've got insulin resistance. Your pancreas is kind of like a car, and it keeps releasing, like petrol, using. And over time, if it starts to be overused, it will wear out like an old car and say, I give up. And that's when diabetes happens. So people often say, oh, I've got diabetes because I eat too much sugar. That's not necessary. Well, maybe that's the type of carbohydrate you overate, but it's all back to the effect on your pancreas. So any extra food that we do eat, and we get this surge in glucose and insulin, any extra insulin will be stored around the middle as fat. So one of the things to help with losing the tummy fat is not only doing your exercise, but also a regular supply of blood glucose levels. So, as I said before, you might be eating every 4 to 5 hours, so eating 3 meals a day, but with your insulin to work well, it is eating small and frequent. So we know that's why with the meal plan, we've kind of got, I call them a grab-and-go snack for mid-morning and afternoon. Morning tea doesn't have to be sitting down and having a huge snack. It might be just an apple on the run or a handful of nuts on the run. So for your insulin, that's a way of helping your metabolism because your hormones are actually regular. This found from whether you're following the meal plan or whether when you do eat regularly that you do know that your appetite's a bit more in tune. Who finds that? Yeah. Who finds that when they don't do it? What's the effect? And I can answer for myself, but when you may have skipped a snack or a meal, you've been busy, what would happen? That's right, you get grumpy, you just get cravings, absolutely, you get cravings, and it's kind of like everything's out of whack. So that's one of the hormones. Also with hormones, yes.
Yeah, just a question in regard to the worn out pancreas. Can that be reversed, or is that once it's had it, you're shocked up?
Oh, I don't like anything like that. Okay. The not so good thing, and not put the fear of God in you, that once you get diabetes, once your pancreas is worn out, you've got diabetes. So that's kind of, you're not a dead duck. What you can do is you can kind of revive the duck and actually survive. It means that when you get diabetes, you can work at improving your lifestyle to help some of the insulin work. So when you've got diabetes, your pancreas will still release insulin. Type 1 and type 2 diabetes are different. So type 1 diabetes, your pancreas is shot. That's why you have to inject with insulin. With type 2 diabetes, your insulin's just not working really well. So you can actually have controlled diabetes and keep it working well. But it means that once you get diabetes, you can't reverse it. Now there's a lot of people saying you can reverse diabetes. You can't. I know with, and I have to read more into this, gastric banding. A lot of people saying when they're having a banding, their diabetes is gone. I'm not sure how that works, or whether they're saying my blood sugars are always perfect. So some people come to me and say, my sugars are perfect, I don't have diabetes anymore. You do, it just means you're doing the right thing. That makes sense. Yeah. So it's just trying to prevent that from happening. Yeah. With, I was going to say, with your thyroid, who's ever had an underactive or overactive thyroid? Yeah. So did you notice any changes in weight or energy when it happened, or?
Yeah, substantial weight loss.
Yep.
Heart was running, rate of loss. Yeah. Rise in body temperature.
Yep. So it's kind of like.
So is that under or over?
That's overactive, isn't it? It's kind of like the car's, is it like the word's idling, revving like this, and you burn extra, that's when you lose a lot of weight. People who have underactive thyroid, that's when they will gain weight. So the thyroid hormone also regulates your metabolism. That doesn't mean to say, if you've got an underactive thyroid and you say, well, that's the reason why I've gained less weight, it doesn't help. So with your thyroid hormone, first of all, some people say, I'm not losing weight, I don't know why, but often I get them to get not only a test on their insulin, just to see if they're insulin resistant, but also to get a test on their thyroid to see if there's any problems. And